Today we're going to talk about the sawmill. I started out with a Kubota 35 horsepower diesel engine and off of a military air compressor, and mounted it on a frame. I wanted to do predominantly hardwood or dimensional wood, so what we did was on the back side here, it came down to a bottom shaft and used a manual clutch assembly to tighten the belts up. Then from there feeds power down the bottom to a right angle gearbox, and then that turns a I believe this one's 26-inch blade, and then the vertical blade is 28 inches. Then I came back and put all the guard assembly to help with the sawdust. Got a sawdust chute here to help direct it. So that's the motor and the blades. Had to go with a 24 volt alternator, 75 amp, because all of the positioning of the main cut axis, and this is what I call a cut axis, the intersection between the two blades there. So everything's PLC controlled, and controls the position of that cut axis right there. I went with the 24 volt alternator because I've got 24 volt wheelchair motors doing all the positioning. This one right here is the feed works, which goes into a 20-to-1 gear ratio gearbox, connects across to the other side, pulley down to a number 40 roller chain, and then my overall, I don't know if you can see it through there, but my overall track is right at 38 feet long. Okay, so that's my feed works motor there. Then right here is the Acme rod for the left and right positioning, or what I call the x-axis positioning. Let me walk around the end there. Yeah, this is the X positioner drive shaft, which turns the two half-inch Acme rods. Their turn ratio is 8 turns to 1 inch. So roughly 0.125 per rotation. And then we've got Allen Bradley encoders, 5,000 count to 1 on the back side of that. So that's two of the axes. The up and down is what I call the y-axis, and it's driven by this motor, wheelchair motor. Coming down, it's tied across to all 4 Acme rods to the other end on the other side. So I have 4 Acme rods, 1 inch diameter, which is a 5-to-1 ratio, 5 turns per 1 inch ratio. On each of those, I got into a bind one time where one had slipped or something, so it caused me a lot of grief and headache. So what I did is I came back and added Prox pickups on all 4 Acme rods. So now if one of them gets more than I think 30 degrees out of rotation with the other ones, it'll shut the system down and give me a fault. So that's helped out a lot. There's the encoder for the y-axis right there. Okay. All of this is controlled either via the hand switches here, or also a little small, cheap, you can get them on eBay for I think 15 bucks. Manual control, wireless remote. I think they power 12 volt, and then they've got 12 relays, normally open, normally closed relays, that I believe they can handle up to 120 volts. On the control system, I went with 24 volt IO, and then on the inside, this is what's different from everybody else's, and I know it looks bad, I need to clean it up. Anyway, Allen Bradley Control Logics version 16, MO2 servo cards for the encoder feedback, relays for interacting with the mini arc 24 volt DC drives mounted on the side there, and that thing hanging real ugly right there is the speed system. As far as I've got a low and a high speed for each motor. To do a regular move, I go fast until I get to the slow down mode, the last quarter of an inch or eighth of an inch, and then it'll creep in at a smaller speed. Alrighty. In addition to the sawmill itself, I went ahead and added hydraulics. Bought the majority of all my stuff from Surplus Center, and then when I was out of the country working, I was digging around on eBay, and this top 3 spool, I want to say I paid roughly $250 off Surplus Center. This bottom, I needed some more valves, so I got this bottom one off of eBay out of Finland, bigger capacity, and 7 spools for I want to say 190, maybe 210 delivered. So it was a lot cheaper. Also, if you do add hydraulics, cheapest place to get your hoses, fittings, all that good stuff is Surplus Center. And please go ahead and buy 2 or 3 times what you need as far as fittings and adapters and stuff like that, because if you buy double everything, it's still going to be cheaper than if you had to go to Napa or any hydraulic store and buy fittings there, or get a hose remade or something like that. So buy you some extra hoses, buy you some extra fittings. It's a ton cheaper buying it off Surplus Center. Alright, so I added the hydraulics last hitch. I've got 2 in-feed decks. One's got hydraulics, one doesn't. I got a loader down there, unloader here. I went with clamps. I can pull them up. I pull the little tab up and out for when I'm loading, and then drop it back in to do the log. Went ahead and built a log turner, and the clamps didn't work out like I wanted to. I was doing it at an angle, and letting it slide across this top deck thing here, and that just wasn't working. So I cut them loose and just went in line with them, and I'm gonna have to probably get a different adapter here to offset when I'm first starting to pull it in. I just don't have enough stroke, and I don't have enough room over on this side. I know one member on Forestry Forum did a video, or did a post on making a scissor clamp, and looking back, I think that's probably what I should have done, is just made a scissor clamp and then attach the cylinder to that. I wanted at first to do the piney wood log turner, but I'm limited on my depth. I've only got probably 12 to 14 inches below saw deck, and but in retrospect, if this doesn't work out right here, I may just dig a hole and put them down there under it, especially for the other end, the other saw deck. When I add hydraulics, that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably put a piney woods log turner down there. I've got the cylinder up under the sawdust there for the log stops. You can see the assembly there. Nothing's covered. One thing this hitch I need to do is add that cylinder attached to that and tie them two together. But basically, that's the sawmill, and if I can get this video uploaded, I'm finna cut this big pine. And like I say, the difference between this one versus a band mill is I cut in both directions, and once I take my top cut off, my bark cut, and then come over to the side and make a bark cut, so I have a clean top deck and a clean left side. At that point, I can just go across and or start going down, but I am limited by the distance between the top of my blade and the bottom of my assembly, the frame there. So predominantly, right now that's, I want to say 8.5 inches. I need to drop it down and drop the drive shaft down, and I can get another 2 inches, I think, off of it, so I can cut 2x12s. But the mill was predominantly made for quarter sawing, to be able to quarter saw oak, and that's why I went with the twin blade. And then it's for what I do is automation stuff, with all the feedbacks and stuff like that. And then I got a graphics computer in there too that interacts with it, so I can see what all the positions are and everything. Predominantly, I want to be able to quarter saw and punch the button and let it do its thing, as far as positioning. Cut 2 horizontal boards, then swap 3 vertical boards on top, then back and forth, stuff like that. But anyway, let me get her cranked up, and I'll see if I can get us another video.